Welcome to The Tonight Show with me, Jay Leno. Tonight on the show, we are honored to have with us one of the greatest comedians and also one of the weirdest men of all time, Mel Brooks.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you're a widely recognized comedian. You've been awarded for many of your great achievements. You have 3 movies, Blazing Saddles #6, The Producers #11, and Young Frankenstein #13, ranked in the American Film Institute's top 20 comedies of all time. Also, you're one of just 11 people to win the GATE Awards, meaning you've won a Grammy, Academy Award, Tony, and Emmy. The Grammy came for the producer's 2002 movie soundtrack, the Academy Award for the producer's 1968 movie, the Tony for the producer's on Broadway version in 2001, and the Emmy for your writing on Your Show of Shows in 1957. What type of honor is that for you?
Well, it's certainly a tremendous honor for me to be included in that group with all the other great comedians who have won those awards. And, you know, I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to work with so many different and great and talented people to help me achieve those honors. But really, for me, I try not to think about the awards that I've received because the satisfaction for me in being a comedian is really just about making people laugh and having people tell me that I do a good job. So really, I try not to focus on the awards or especially what any idiotic critic tells me.
Why? What do you have against critics?
Well, critics are some of the most useless people on the face of the earth. They sit on their pompous asses all day and just tell entertainers how much they suck when, you know, really they don't have any talent for themselves. And my first movie in 1963, called The Critic, was inspired by really just my dislike for them. And one day I was sitting with my buddies and I was just watching a movie and I was doing my best impression of a critic. And there was one particular line where I said, "Oh, I think this is symbolism. It's symbolic of junk," and they got a kick out of that. So they said, you know, that would make a great movie, just doing that impression. So that's what I did, and that's really how I got my start.
So at what point in your career did you say to yourself, I want to be a comedian? And how did you jumpstart your career?
Well, it all started, you know, when I was growing up as a kid in Brooklyn during the Depression. And, you know, it was really tough after my father died when I was just 2 years old. But my mother still did a fantastic job raising us, well, at least my 3 brothers, because, you know, I turned into a lunatic. But, you know, I mean, I was a really crazy kid, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that, you know, ever since I was a young boy, I really believe that, you know, if you're quiet, you're not really living. You got to be loud and colorful and lively all the time. And also, I think God actually had a part in making me energetic, because, you know, if you look at the tragedy of Jewish history and religion, unrelieved lamenting would just be intolerable. So for every 10 Jews beating their breasts about everything that happened to them, he made one to amuse the breastfeeders. And by the time I was 5 years old, I knew I was that one. And so, you know, after that, because of my outgoing personality, I decided to give entertainment a shot. So I got my first role when I was 14 in a drama called Henry. And there's one particular instance in the play where, you know, I'm sitting down, whatever, and I'm supposed to get handed a glass of water. You know, I'm 14, there's 2,000 people watching me, I'm nervous, the glass is covered in water and stuff, and I get handed me, it slips right through my fingers and smashes on the floor. And I just freaked out, I froze mid-play, just like a deer in headlights. And I really didn't know what to do. And, you know, so I was standing there like this, just kind of frozen, and finally I walked through the crowd, just like this, with the headlights right there, took off this ridiculous white wig I was wearing, leaned in, and almost in tears went, you know, "It's my first play, I'm sorry, I'm 14, I didn't know what to do." And right there, curtain just closes, everyone, it's a mess. The producer came up to me, almost tried to kill me right there, and he chased me across town. And after that failed drama role, I knew I was probably better suited for comedy. So after that, I enlisted in the Army when I was 17, and this was actually during World War II. And I was an engineer, and my job was defusing landmines, which you can imagine is a pretty stressful and nerve-wracking job. But, you know, I tried to stay as lighthearted about it as I could be, and, you know, I kind of became the platoon jokester because of that. It's also where I tried out my Hitler impression for the first time, which was pretty popular. So, and actually, people are surprised to know that I saw some action in the war. And there was one particular instance where, during the Battle of the Bulge, where, you know, we, the Americans, were camping out on one side of a river, and on the other side, you know, we could see their campfires and everything, were the Germans, and we could hear them singing around their campfires, like, "Yah, yah, yah, yah," and all this stuff. You know, everyone's getting pretty frustrated, so finally I turned to the guy next to me, I go, you know, give me that blowhorn, that bullhorn right there. And I just went like this, I went, "Sometimes I feel your love is near me." And I sang this whole song and everything, and believe it or not, after the song was done, I could hear coming across from the river, "Ah, that's good, yeah, yeah," and all this stuff. And then, you know, the next day, back to normal, and they're shooting at me again. But, you know, it happens. So, after I returned home from the war, I figured I might as well give my, you know, comedian career a try. So I found a resort in the Catskill Mountains where they had stand-up acts, and I kind of got some exposure into that. And after a couple years, I decided to give writing a try because really anyone can direct or produce, but there are only a few really gifted writers because they're the ones actually coming up with the material and everything. So I figured I can make it as a writer, I can make it as anything. So in 1950, I got a job on Your Show of Shows, which is where I would win my first Emmy, and it was hosted by Sid Caesar. And that was a really important time in my life because I met Woody Allen, another famous comedian, Carl Reiner, who I'd win my first Grammy with for the 2,000-Year-Old Man records in the 70s, and most importantly, my future wife, Anne Bancroft, who I would perform with in theater over the years. And in 1958, I left Your Show of Shows. Well, technically I was fired, but it's not important. And after that, I went out to Hollywood to write my first movie, which would eventually be The Critic in 1963. But a funny story, on my second day in Hollywood, I was going to work at Universal Studios. And I see across from me, another building says Grand Art across the top. So I turn to my buddy, I go, what's that Grand Art? And he goes, that's Cary Grant's company, Grand Art. I was like, Cary Grant, the real Cary Grant, he works right there. It's like, yes, Cary Grant, the real Cary Grant. I was like, I grew up in Brooklyn, Cary Grant, he's my hero. Cary Grant works right there. Yes, Cary Grant. So, he says to me, he usually comes in around 12 o'clock, it's like 11:45 now. He'll be here, I swear, he'll be here. So, about 10 minutes later, car pulls up, out comes none other than Cary Grant. And I'm just standing there, my mouth open, everything. My buddies come on, like, Mel, come on, let's go to lunch, get out of here. So we're walking down the sidewalk, and then about a minute later, I hear behind me, Mel Brooks, Mel Brooks. And I turn around, and it's Cary Grant, he's talking to me. And he's, I hear him saying, Mel, I bought all your records, you're the funniest guy. And I didn't know what to do, I was just looking at him like an idiot, and I turn to my friend, and I'm like, Cary Grant's talking to me, what do I do? And he yells at me, talk back to him. So I look back and I go, oh, Cary Grant, how you doing, Cary Grant? What's going on? I didn't know what to call him. I called him by one name, his full name, Cary Grant, one word. And so eventually Cary Grant, he asked me out to lunch, and Cary Grant's taking me out to lunch. So go out to a restaurant, and he has a hard-boiled egg. That's it, I don't know why. I had a pastrami sandwich on rye and all this stuff. So we're talking, saying, what's your favorite color? I say blue, he says yellow, we make small talk like that. So we go back to work. I go to Universal Studios, he goes to Grand Art. Next day, I get a call at Universal Studios. It's Cary Grant, he wants to take me out to lunch again. So I'm going crazy, I'm combing my hair, I'm brushing my teeth with my finger, all this stuff. I run outside, meet Cary Grant, there we go, skipping down the path, meeting Cary Grant, going out to lunch. We go out to lunch, he has a hard-boiled egg, again, I don't know why. I had another turkey sandwich and all this stuff, and we're talking, what's your favorite sport? I say baseball, he says football, we're making small talk like that. Next day, go back to work. Third day, calls me up again, it's Cary Grant. I was like, all right, Cary, let's go out to lunch. We're going down the path, and at that point, we really had nothing else to say to each other. We'd exhausted all the conversation that we possibly could have in common in the first 2 days. So, pretty boring lunch. I get back to work. Fourth day, again, I get a call. And, sorry about that. And, Cary Grant calls me up. I go, who's this? It's Cary Grant. You want to come, is Mel Brooks there? Does he want to come out to lunch? And I go, I'm not in. And I slammed and hanged up the phone on him. So, on my fourth day in Hollywood, I managed to, embarrass myself and piss off one of my childhood heroes, so. Anyway, so then, I was doing some work in Hollywood. I came up with my first film. And then really my big break for me was in 1965 when I created and co-wrote for the show Get Smart, which you might know, the movie that was recently made based off my television series, which I created in 1965. And that ran from 1965 to 1970. And it was pretty successful, and that's really where I got my big start.
Well, your first big movie, The Producers, came out just a couple years later in 1968, right?
Yep, that's right, The Producers.
And for those who don't know the premise of the movie, it's two guys try to produce a big flop on Broadway to make money in a strange financial loophole. So they find the most offensive play they can, which is a musical titled Springtime for Hitler. In fact, Mel, why don't you give everybody a little taste of that movie right now?
Sure, how about it?
It's really funny. Pretty bad. It's good.